Good morning. How are you today? Still early? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Good, good. How y'all making it?
Making it.
All right. Okay, so at 8 o'clock. So let's see how many people we have. Few people. Guess. Okay, so do you have any question from yesterday? I mean, this is really a reading material, but we're going through it together. So it's recommended that after we finish the lecture to go over it one more time to sync. So to have what and to take and do the lab. So okay, so this is one of the most important part right here. It talks about security principles. And basically, whenever you share the folder or files, you need to know who has access, or if you're in charge of the network, you need to assign permission to groups. And of course, what's in the group? Users. We have users in the group. So we need to see how that works first. You need to understand how the permission works first. That's why this one is very important to understand. So they talk about security principles, which is one of them. We have discretionary access control list. They call it DACL.
Hey, Mr. Charif.
Record it.
Yes, please.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you. So they call it DACL. So what is that? Basically, a list of security principles. Basically, define what a permission a user have on that particular object. And that's what we say, each permission that define access to an object. Now, each statement or each entry in the discretionary access control, we call access control entry, ACE. Okay, so basically sometimes you might have, and we're going to talk about this one, you might have a multiple permissions. For example, if you have if you belong to a group, let's say you are in HR, and you have certain permission to access a folder 1, for example. And the same user maybe belongs to a different group. They might have another permission. So all these are entries, access control entry. And later on, we need to see how we can combine or what permission that particular user is going to have if he has a multiple access control entry. Now, of course, we have the object owner. The object owner, usually the user as the user that create that folder. Okay, he's the owner of that particular folder. And like what they describe, usually the user account that created the object or group, or user who has been assigned ownership of the object. Now, he's the owner. Can somebody else take that ownership? Well, yeah, if you are the system administrator, you should be able to take the ownership, because if you have a Joe, if you have a user named Joe and Joe decides to quit the company and they might have important documents, okay? So the system, the administrator can right click on that folder and take ownership, even though the administrator, he did not create that folder or that file. So they still can take ownership, and after he take ownership, he can put the ownership with somebody else. So, and of course, we have the system access control list, which is usually this one, define the setting for auditing access to an object. What do we mean by this? This one, sometimes you can see who is trying to access that particular object. And this is where we use the audit. Why we need that audit? Because sometimes if you have a user and you have an object, and that particular user, he knows he doesn't have permission, and he's trying to access that particular folder. So this is part of the audit. The audit is going to audit basically the successful access to the folder and also the attempt. Okay, so they can see who's attempting. So that's why we call it audit. So this is very, very, very important. Any question about this one here? So to summarize this one here, so basically, for the user to have an access to an object, he used to have what? He used to have some kind of discretionary access control. He used to be on the DACL list. Otherwise, he cannot access it. Even though if he can log into the domain or whatever, but still cannot, doesn't mean it allow you to access an object if you don't have permission to access it. So on the second one, they're talking about the how permission are assigned. So the user creates the object, basically the folder or subfolders or files, whatever, and the user account is added to the object ADCL. And this one is they called explicit permission. So that means that particular user has a permission to an object. Or you can put a group. The group the user belongs to is added to the object ACL. And this is the preferable way. Basically, we don't give, usually, I mean, that's how it works, at least in an enterprise environment. You put users in group because the group manage the users. Then you assign a permission to the group what they can access. Now, understandable, sometimes you might have special case where you assign permission just for a particular users. So permission is inherited from the DACL of the parent object, and the user or group account has been added to. So let's say you have a folder, which is an object called folder 1. Inside folder 1, you have folder 1A and folder 1B and folder 1C. So you don't have to go to each of these folders to give permissions. So if you give a group a permission to access folder 1, automatically they're going to have access or inherit permission to all the subfolders that's in folder 1. Now, they have a special cases, right? Well, suppose we have a folder with INTE 2010, which is basically the class. I'll make a folder. And in this folder, I will have subfolders. I have one for teacher, one for student. So in that particular case, I can go and block inheritance and assign a permission to each different group. You see? And that's basically we call like a block inheritance. Or you inherit it. So you have, by default, you inherit the permission. So if you have a folder A and you have subfolders inside folder A, and you give, for example, a group of user permission to access folder A, then automatically they will have a permission to access all the subfolders inside folder A. Now, of course, they have something called effective permission. So effective permission, when a user has been assigned permission to an object through a combination of methods. Like what? Well, suppose we have a user belongs to different groups, and each group have different types of permission to that folder. So what kind of permission that user is going to have? I'll give you an example. Well, suppose we have Adam. He belongs to HR, and he belongs to, let's say, accounting. So Adam has an HR read. And accounting has, for example, write permission. So Adam, therefore, because belongs to different groups and each group has different permission, he's going to have permission, combination of the two permissions. So now he's going to have read write. And that's part of the effective permission. And as they say here, the user effective permissions are a combination of the assigned permissions. So he's going to take the combination of the two permissions. Because why? Because he belongs to two groups. So we're going to combine whatever permission of the two groups to that particular user. Any question about this particular topic right here? No. Now, we have shared permission. The share permission applied to folders and file access across the network. Yeah, this is the case. Just a reminder. Just the case. This is as long as you use NTFS. But if you use that FAT, is not the case. So, and basically that's what we use most of the time, unless somebody still have an old technology. So what they're talking about, share permission applied to folders and file accessed across the network. Cannot be configured on individual files. And you have 3 share permissions. Read, change, in full control. So generally the default share permission is read for everyone. Everyone is a group. That's what we call everyone. Everyone that has account on the network, okay, they call everyone group. So that means everyone. So everyone has read. Some people, they don't change the everyone, they keep it as default, but they can tweak it in the security tab, okay? And that's what we can see later on. So this is basically if you go and share a file, a folder. If you share a folder, you're gonna have, you need to assign that user one of these, okay? Like this. And this is the everyone group right here. So if you want, you can remove the everyone group, or you can keep the everyone group and you tweak it here. You uncheck this, and you give them just read. So over here, anything is deny. Deny means deny. That's it. So deny access is deny access. So if you put right here on the second, we'll give you an example. I think we did one yesterday about the share. Okay, the file and folder permissions can be configured for on the folder and file. Folder have 6 basic permission and 14 advanced permissions. File have 5 basic permission and 15 advanced permissions. So notice that over here we have a lot of different options than the share. Okay. So you have read and execute, list, folder contents, write, modify, and full control. Usually it's not a good idea to give full control for just anybody. Or if you want to give them full control, maybe you can check, you go to advanced and you check not, you check delete, not deny delete. So you cannot delete the folder by accident. So it depends on the system administrator how it's going to handle it. But this is basically the permissions. Read and execute, list folder contents to see what's in that folder. Write means you write to that file. Modify, and full control, basically same thing, but you have a slight different. The full control basically can assign permissions to that file or folders. Okay. Now modify, they can change, they can do whatever they want, and full control, they can change permission, and the most important part, they can take ownership or assign ownership to somebody else, to someone else. So those is very important types of permission. So what's read? Read basically if you have a read, basically you cannot do much. You can see you just view the files, okay? That's it. So you cannot do any change to them. Now read and execute basically grants the same permission as read and include the ability to run application or script. So you can execute it basically. If you have a file, you want to run it, you can run it if you have read and execute. So if I send you, if you have read and write, read and execute, and I send you, you go to that file or folders and you have executable file, let's say you have a .exe file, so you can execute that program. Now, list folder contents. So this is only for folders. This permission applies only to folder and grant the same permission as read and execute. So, as they say here, however, because it does not apply to files, read and execute must also be set on the folder to allow user to open files in that folder. Now, of course, write, you can write to the files. So basically, you can change the attribute and you can add information to that particular file. And of course, if you have write, you can read and execute. If you have write. Now, modify, a lot of people get confused between modify and full control. So modify, basically the user can read, modify, delete, create files in that folder. But the only thing is you cannot change permission or take ownership when you have modify. But if you have full control, you have the same permission as modify, but you add to it, to the modifier that you can assign or change permission on that folder. So that's the difference between modify and full control. Okay, files and folder ownership. Every file system object, files and folder has an owner. An object is granted certain implicit permissions. A user can become the owner of the file system object in 3 ways. One of the most obvious way is to go ahead and create the files or folder. Take ownership of a file or folder. You cannot take ownership for somebody else's folder unless if you have what? If you are, like, for example, system administrator, or you are the system administrator on that local machine or on a domain. That's the only way. Or the administrator will assign you a permission. So that's the only way. So you have to have somebody in charge of the system, which is basically the system administrator. When you log in as a system administrator, basically you can take ownership, even though you don't have permission on that, but still you can take ownership. You're not the one who created the folder, but you can assign ownership. And this is basically when we went over here and say full control. So one of the features of the full control, basically, you can assign permission on that folder and you can take ownership. Any question about this part? Wow. Okay, so permission inheritance, we talked about this one here. So basically, if you create a folder and you have subfolders in it, if you have a folder and you have subfolders and you give somebody a permission for that folder, you're gonna inherit all what's in it. It's like you have, for example, a room, and in the room they have a closet. And I say, okay, Joe, this is the key for this room. You can do whatever you want in it, okay? So that means you will have access to the room and to the closet. The closet here is like a subfolder, so you can access it too. So that's basically what inheritance means. And that's what they say. On the NTFS or resilient file system volume, initial permission are set at the root of the volume. All folder and files in the volume inherit these settings unless configured otherwise, which is true. Subfolders and files are configured to inherit permission by default. Now, if you don't like this idea, you don't want to do this, you can go and block inheritance. You can disable that. And that's not the second one. Disable permission inheritance, open the advanced security setting dialog box on an object and click disable inheritance button. So that's how you do it. But by default, the inheritance is enabled. Now, if you don't want to propagate the permission to all the subfolders in there, you can block it. And that's how you do it right here. This is enable inheritance, or you can disable it. So that's basically what you can see. So you can see where you go to this advanced. This is very important one. You can share, auditing, effective access to see what kind of, if you have a multiple entries for like you have a user with different groups and you want to see what's the effective permission you have. This is another one. This is for auditing. So, and also you can add or remove and edit if you want a particular permission. So that's what the edit for. So really to take advantage of this one here, if you go to your machine and you share a file, you create another user, you can see all the screens and practice on it, all on the lab too, so you can do that. And that's what they say, effective access. So the access is security principle has two to a file system object when taking sharing permission, file and folder permission, and group memberships into the account. Yeah, this has to do with, because sometimes you have, and this is, it happens a lot. So you have a user belongs to multiple groups. And each group, if each group has a different permissions, so at the end of the day, we need to know what is the effective permissions for that particular user. Usually, like we said earlier, is the combination of all permissions. And sometimes it not only belongs to different groups. Sometimes we have we set permission on the share level, and somebody's, and we're going to talk about this one, I guess, on a different slide, but sometimes you give a user, let's say, full control on the share. But when you go to the security and you say, okay, it has only read, at this time, you have some kind of conflict between share and a security tab or the advanced sharing. So what permission that user is going to have? So you're going to have the most restrictive permission in this case. Is in the share, you give them read, a full control. In the security, you give them just read. So now we're going to apply the most restrictive permission on that object. And a lot of people, and that's why, if you remember, I don't know if we talked about this one. So if you want, you give that user full control, whatever, on the share, then you go to security tab and you can tweak it and you give them the right permission. Okay. Let's see what they have here. Yeah. And this is the active partition. So you have share one, you have full control, reverse folder, execute files. It's not, definitely doesn't have a full control here. So create files and write data is not, see that? So that's basically what you can tweak it right here too, if you want effective permission or effective access. Okay, how are we doing so far? Not bad. Using deny in the ACE, boom. So what happened if you have deny and not deny? If you have a conflict, remember what we said, sometimes a user belongs to two groups. Well, let's say one group means he has read or execute or full control, and the other group has deny. What are you supposed to do? Who's going to win? If you have read and write, then you have the combination of the two. But you have deny is deny. That's it. And deny permission overrides all other permissions. So if you get mad at somebody, you say, okay, you check box, deny, that's it. You cannot access any of these information. So as a rule, a deny permission overrides an allow permission. Exception, if the deny permission is inherited from a parent object, and the allow permission is explicitly added to the object DCL, the allow permission take precedent if there is a conflict. That's the only exception. So if the deny permission is inherited from the parent object and allow permission and explicitly added to the objects, so then the allow permission is going to take over. And that's the only exception. File and fold permission rules to keep in mind when copying. Okay, this is very important. When copying or moving files on folder within or between volume, because sometimes, okay, you have a folder, let's say on volume A or volume B, okay, and you want to copy it to different volume, or you want to move it to a different folders. So in this case, what's going to happen to the permission? So if you have a file, it's in volume A, and you move it to volume B, or you copy it to volume C, whatever, what's going to happen to the permissions? And that's the rule. Keep in mind, a file or folder copied with the same NTFS volume or to a different NTFS volume. Now we say copied. Okay, so a file or folder copied within the same NTFS volume or to a different NTFS volume inherit permission from the destination folder. So whatever the destination folder. So if you have a file or folder, you copy it within the NTFS volume or to a different NTFS volume. So what's going to happen to that file or the folder? So it's going to inherit permission from the destination folder, wherever you move that folder. Okay, it's going to inherit the destination. Now, a file or a folder move within the same NTFS volume. Let's say you have a volume B, and on volume B, you have a multiple folders, and you have folder A, and you move folder A to a folder C, but still under the same volume. So in this case, folder A will retain its original permission. Just like you go to my room, for example, and you have, I'll give you a book. I say, okay, you can access my book. You're still in the same volume. Now, if I take my book and I put it on a separate desk, but you're still in the same room, you still can, what? Have permission to use that book. So that's what they mean by that. So a file or folder move within the same NTFS volume, retain its original permissions. And this is very, very, very important. Why you retain it? Because you're still on the same volume. Now, a file or a folder move to a different NTFS volume inherits the destination folder permissions. Okay, so same scenario. If I give you access to my book in my classroom, you still can access that. But if I put that book in Mr. What's his name? Scott's room. Now Scott's room has a different policy or different whatever. Okay, he might tell you no, you cannot access it. So you have to follow his rule. So in this case, basically, we apply the rule of the destination folders or permissions. So those very, very, very important, and they give you a lot of questions on the test. So file or a folder moved to a different NTFS volume inherits the destination folder permission. So sometimes people get confused between all that stuff. So if you remember, instead of remember them all, remember just which one will retain a permission and which one does not. So far, the one retains permission, a file or folder moved within the same NTFS volume retain its original permissions. Anything else is going to be what? Is going to be inherit the destination folder permissions. Now, file or folder moved from FAT or FAT32 volume to an NTFS volume, then they're going to inherit the destination folder permissions. Now, if you do the opposite, a file or folder moved or copied from NTFS volume to FAT or FAT32 volume, we're going to lose all the permission setting because FAT and FAT32 volume do not support permissions. So that's the rule that you need to remember. Now, as you can see, the only case that will retain information retains its original permission if it's on the move within the same NTFS volume. You move within the same volume, well, that's why you need to understand what the volume means. Volume is like a partition. So you are still in the same partition or in the same volume. So as long as you move, I mean, that's what I gave you an example. It's like a class, like room. Okay, I say, okay, you can do whatever you want to do over here on that. I give you a computer or a book, whatever object, and I say you can use it as long as you are in this room. Okay. Then you're gonna retain. If I move the book or the volume or whatever objects to a different desk, okay, because you're still in the same room, you still have permission to access. You retain its original permission. But if you move it outside that volume or partition, you're gonna inherit the permission on that folder. So if you move the folder from volume to volume, so I don't know what kind of permission on the other side. So you're gonna inherit the destination, I guess. Any question about this one here? Now this is important. Why? Because some people, for replication purposes or for some fault tolerance or backup, whatever. So if you copy or move a file from one place to other, you need to know what's going to happen to the permissions. Oh, you moved it to a different volume. Now the user cannot access it. So you need to know why. So I recommend, if you're trying to do this, you create a volume, or you create a folder on a different volume first, set the permission on that other volume first. Then when you move this one to the other one, all the permission will be ready. So you don't have to go and do that. Any question about this one here? No questions? Okay. Now this is a summary. So that's basically the end of chapter 1. I mean, chapter 4. You have a lot of labs. Hopefully you do the labs. And the other one, chapter 5, we're going to talk about configure advanced storage. Let's see. Let's see something here. What can do? We still have some times. let's see. Well, it's right here. Server. I don't think I have I didn't think I have a domain in here. Let's see. Hyper-V. Yeah, I don't have. Okay, let's see. Let's see what I have here. So we can make sense out of it. We gotta see. G. Volume V. Okay, so we have different volumes. So we're gonna see. We're gonna create a folder here, a new folder. And we're gonna say folder 1. Okay, this is folder 1 here. So before we do that, now I don't have any users. So I need to create a couple of users first. So this is not a domain, but let's see, it works on the work group too. So let's see. So if I go to, let's see, minimize this one here. Minimize this one here. I don't need that one. This is my computer. I click here. You go manage and local server. I guess you have to go to control panel. Oh, that's work group. Okay. See. See local users and groups right here. I can create users. User, I can say make user. That's all I need. The username, password. 01. Confirm password. Now, really, this is not a good example, and the reason why, because this is for work groups, so you have to log off and log on with different. After you create the user over here, it's going to tell you user must change password and next log in. So this is typically if you do it on the domain, but for my case, I have never expired, so to create it. Okay, so close. Now I have Mike in here. All right. Now, if you right click in here, by default, you go properties. You want to see a member to which group, because you can create your own group. And by default, you have a lot of built-in groups, so you can see. So I'm a member of the users group, not the administrator. And that's what the everyone group, which is user group, or everybody on the network. Well, let's see. So if you do cancel here and you go groups, so this is all the groups you can see right here. So those are built-in groups. Now, of course, when you are a part of the domain, it's going to be different. Okay, it's going to be some of these plus. plus other groups. So let's see. So we went to, well, let's go back to that screen one more time. And we go to computer management one more time. And I can create different groups. New group, and we need to call it group name, RM, a group. I'm going to add users to the RM group. I'll put Mike. So I'm going to make sure that user exists. So check, and the answer is, find it. So I say okay. Create. That's it. Close. So that's my group right here. So I'm going to go and create another group. And we're going to say HR group. We add Mike to it. Check name, yes. Create. So now Mike is part of the two groups. So now, if I go to folder 1, which is put it on, I think, on the V volumes. No, G volumes, folder 1. Right click. If I use the share, property share, we have to have the share permissions, which is, it has read and write and owner for that one. So I'm going to add the RM. Now notice this is read and write. Okay, so which is that's fine. The network discovery, that's fine. Done. Now close. So I go back to folder 1 and go to properties and share. I want to add this time HR. I'm going to add, and this time I want to give share. Yes, do this one, done. So if you go to this folder, okay, so now I can restrict it if I want to. If you go back to the property and you go share, you go to advanced sharing, folder 1, add, maximum user, allow, let's say 5 users. Share name, folder 1. Sorry. Folder 1 here. Or you can change it actually. Doesn't have to be. Permissions. So everyone group, like we discussed, has this. I'm going to add HR. Check if HR exists. Yes. Okay. And I'm going to give them change. HR, I'm going to give them change right here. I'll just give them read. Why? Okay. Share name folder already exists. Oh, I need to give them a different one. Just one. Folder. All right. Now, so we're gonna go to the same folder, go to properties. Do we have properties? Sharing, and sharing. Add, well, let's see. Add, share name, just one. I think it's not gonna take it. It's just a work group is very hard to work with it. Active Directory. Permissions. Add. And check name, yes. And now I'm gonna put change. Apply. Okay. All right. Hold on. I guess you have because it's let's see. So test two. Apply. Okay. Close. So if I go over here to Properties, Security tab, let's see. Yeah, this is the work group. So we need to see RM right here. System has RM. Okay, have read, execute, list folders, and read. No writes. HR has all the information. See that? All full control. Because they combine, I think, both of them. So let's see if I go in advance. This would say effective access allow you to view the effective permission for a user or group or device account. So let's see, share permissions of this guy here. Okay, so you can see on the RM you have read and execute. On this one has full control. So okay, do I have on the list here? Do I have user called Mike? Let's see. See my name in there. Only I see the group. Okay. Yes, I would do it in the next class. I do it in the main control. So better. Because this way I have to log in as a different user every time. So let's see what else we got. Of course, this folder is empty. So let's see, where is it? G. You can go over here and create another subfolders. You say folder 1-A. Now, if you go right here, you go to properties, you go to security, and you can see the same thing, inherit the same as a parent folder. So if I go back to folder 1, you go to properties, you go to security, I believe. Let's see where we go to advanced. Let's see, advanced. Okay, so replace all child object permission entries with inherit permission into your object. So I need to go to this guy here and edit. Let's see. You can give him whatever you edit the permission and apply only this permission to the object or container within this container. So you can do this one if you want to or not. So this is an option. And you can add, modify, and say, okay, enable inheritance. Okay. For disable inheritance, enable inheritance, disable inheritance, apply. Let's see. Now we go back on this subfolder, see what permissions you're gonna get in there. Security, you get go to, I don't know, HR or RM. Okay, so you still have the same permission as the parent. Okay, I guess we have to do more lab on this, on the domain, not on work group, but it's the same principles. So, any questions about the rules that we discussed? I'm sure you have some labs to do, retaining all these permissions and all that stuff. So for tomorrow, what we're going to be doing is maybe we go over the questions for chapter 4. Please read the chapter so we can answer the questions tomorrow, and we're going to start chapter 5. Chapter 5 deals with storage. So this is one of the most important one, I guess. Deals with the storage, with the pools, with all that stuff. So basically, you're going to get a bunch of disks and put them in a pool. So that will allow me to put more storage on my server too. So, all right. Any question? Chat. No questions? Are you guys there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. Anybody has a question?
No question.
Okay, if you don't have a question, so I'm gonna stop right here, and I'll see you in a little bit for a Cisco class.
Okay.
All right, sir.